My name is Dodie Melton. I was born and raised in California in Yosemite National Park, and I spent all my early years there. My grandmother was from Greene County, and my grandmother was from Greene County, and in about 1968, I guess it was, I had my last conversation with her in California. And it was the only time after I was an adult that I had a one-on-one conversation with her about, kind of serious things. And so at that time, she told me about growing up in Greene County and how beautiful it was, and she loved the people of Greene County. And I don't know, through that conversation, it just made me want to see the place. So it wasn't until 1981 I took a cross-country trip by myself. I packed up my Chevy van. I'd made a camper out of it and stuck my bicycle on the front end, and away I went. And eventually I came to Greene County. And I had a picture that my mom had given me of the old home place that my grandmother grew up in. And I knew she was from Horse Creek. So I found out how to get to Horse Creek, and in the process, I found the old house. So I knew I was in the right neighborhood. So I went up the road until it turned to a dirt road, and I turned around and started back down, and I met a lady who was out mowing her yard, and I said, my grandmother was a Bergner from Horse Creek, and I'd like to meet somebody that can tell me about the old family. She said, that lady down there was a Bergner before she got married. Tell you anything you want to know. And I told Gladys that later, and it just tickled the hound out of her. Anything you want to know. Well, we got to talking, and we determined that we were shirt-tail cousins. And she introduced me to another shirt-tail cousin who toured me around the area a little bit, gave me some more history.
What's a shirt-tail cousin?
A shirt-tail cousin? It's one that kind of goes way back. But Stevie took me out around Horse Creek in that community and pointed out things of interest to me, family history. And we passed this big old house, a 2-story white farmhouse. And I said, ooh, that's a neat old house. And he said, it's mine, you want to see in it? Sure, why not? So we could hardly get the car off the road for the weeds that were growing up in the driveway. But we did, and we walked through, and there was something about it that was attractive to me. And when I left, I said, if you ever want to sell that old place, nobody lived in it but the groundhogs, and the birds had built nests in the kitchen cupboards, and all of the fixtures were broken, and so on. It was a total wreck, but yet it had an attraction. And I said, if you ever want to sell that, I'd like to know first. Well, he didn't think he'd be selling it, but anyway, I'd left him with that information. So a couple years later, my sister and I and my folks in their car, we caravanned across the country, and we ended up at Horse Creek. And in the process, the son-in-law of Stevie, the man that showed me around, he was an avid hiker, and my dad was an avid hiker. And Walter said, I'd sure like to hike in those Sierra Mountains. And Dad said, well, come on out. And they planned a trip for the following summer. So the next summer, Walter's wife called me, Stevie's daughter, called me to make arrangements for their travel and everything. And in the process, she said, Daddy said, if you want that old house, you can have it. And I said, oh, is he ready to sell? And she said, no, you can have it. Well, after I got over my shock, I said, thank you very much. And so I had a house I had to sell, but that turned out very well. And so I packed up my Chevy van and my bicycle, and the mover van took everything else, and I moved to Horse Creek. Well, the house wasn't livable, so I lived with the cousins, and they were very instrumental in helping me to get it in livable condition, and nicely so. And so one day I was working on the house, and Stevie came up. I didn't have any running water or anything to start with, and he came up every day with a cold Pepsi and a candy bar. And that was time to sit down and talk about the old days. So he was talking one day, and he said something about Christy Bergner and the Christy Bergner place. And I said, are you talking about this house? And he said, yeah, like everybody knew that. No, everybody called it the Granny Jane's house because she was the last owner that had lived in it. And I just knew it as Granny Jane's. And so I was already in the process of renovating it when I realized Christy Bergner was my great-great-grandfather, and he built it. And so I come back home to Horse Creek, and thanks to that last conversation with my grandmother. Now, after I moved here, I went back to California and I was helping my aunt to go through some things in storage that had been there for nearly 20 years, stuff that belonged to my grandmother. And we came across this quilt, and she said, your great-grandfather made that. And I was pretty surprised, but I love old things, I love old people. And so I said, well, I'd like to have it if nobody else wants it. So she let me bring it back to Tennessee. So it came home, but I knew that it was in a fragile condition and I really couldn't protect it the way it needed to be. So several years ago, I asked the Nathaniel Greene Museum, or the Greeneville, Greene County Museum now, if they would like to have it, and they said they would. And so I have never seen it opened up completely. It was folded and it was in a bag when I got it, and I was just afraid to undo it. So these ladies that have been involved in the quilting and everything have brought it back to life, and they asked me if I would say a few words. So Adam Bergner was my great-grandfather. He's the one that made that. His wife was in fragile health in the wintertime when farming was suspended. Why, he would help with household chores, and that included quilting. And so I just feel very privileged to have this made available to me and to us. And he was a very gentle person. Some of you may have heard Wednesday when I spoke at the Morgan Inn event but I'll read a little bit about Adam Bergner. He left Greene County in 1914 and moved to Florida for his health. It didn't do a whole lot of good. He passed away in 1920 at the age of 63. But this is the obituary from the Greeneville Sun about him. Let's see. The funeral attendants, as well as the beautiful floral offerings, attested to the high esteem and regard held for him by his many friends and neighbors here. It can truly be said in the death of this man that a good man has gone to his reward. He had been a lifelong member of the ME Church at Pleasant Hill in Greene County, having never moved his membership from that place, and that is where my membership is now. In church as well as in his daily life, he was a sincere, devoted man, always conscientious of his duty, and ever trying to fulfill the same. And my grandmother was very much like him. Through her, I felt like I had met him, and now this has just brought everything a whole lot closer together. So, thank you.